You're on the road beyond. Welcome to our audience on Facebook and YouTube. I'm Todd Duplantis. Good to have you with us tonight. We have got a great show lined up for you. Good to be back, though. We took a bit of a week off, but we are back now. Got our producer, Pete, joining me this evening, and also Ike, our co-host. He's over in Greece. Ike, how are things right now in Greece?
Oh, gosh, I'm glad you asked that. Now, on this show, we talk a lot about things like extreme weather events and near-death experiences. And let me tell you about what happened to me here in Greece today. So I'm at the computer, and my phone goes off with one of those warnings, so I look at it, and it's got the exclamation point, and there's like lightning and so forth. And then the rest of it is in Greek, which I don't read. So get back on the computer. And, I find a website in English about Greece, and it says, extreme weather events, lockdown, standby, lightning, hail, wind. So I close all the windows, I close the door. And so I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready for this. And then the phone goes off again, and it says incoming weather event, da-da-da. So I've been through hurricanes and stuff, so I'm like, okay, this doesn't look good. So I'm ready. So about 5 minutes, almost right on time, it starts to rain really, really very lightly. And it goes on for 5-10 minutes or so. It's hard to, time slows down when you're in a crisis, so I don't know exactly. Anyway, and then it stops, and I go outside, and the cloud, and it's a nice day, really, for the rest of the day.
Wow.
So I survived an extreme
weather event in Greece. Well, what I've always noticed, and is it just me, but it seems like over the past 15 to 20 years, when you were a kid, you'd see these tests for the emergency broadcast system, but you'd never hear them. Nowadays, it seems like they're willy-nilly. They play them in the morning, they play them in the evening, they play them when you go to bed. Anything you get, they're going to play the emergency broadcast system.
Well, and I think the thing we have to take away from this, certainly that I took away from it, is that the media doesn't usually blow things out of proportion. It's usually, you have to trust the media.
Basically. They're point on, yes, they sure are, and whatever they say pretty much goes and happens not. Anyway, Pete, good to have you with us tonight. I see you've got a new avatar taking us back to the 70s.
Oh, yes. Big fan of Kolchak the Night Stalker. Used to scare the hell out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah. Great show. Well, good to have you with us tonight. We have got a good lineup for you tonight. We're going to get to our news later on, but we've got a special guest. Robert Righi is joining us. Now, he is, you ever wonder what would happen if you get someone who's a medium and they're trained as a forensic psychologist? We're going to hear about that tonight.
That's right. Robert is, as you said, a psychic and also holds a master's degree in forensic psychology and clinical social work from the University of Florida. For more than 30 years, he was a criminal profiler for the state of Florida and has also been involved with exorcisms sanctioned by the Catholic Archdiocese in Chicago. And he also had a chance to interview convicted murderer and all-around fun guy Ted Bundy in 1980.
That's right. We're going to hear all about that. Robert also works with children who are kind of at the end of their journey in life. He is a mentor, but also he works with ones who are in hospice cares. He's needless to say, he uses his gifts to help those dealing with the grieving process as well. Please welcome to the show, Robert Righi. Robert, it's good to see you with us tonight. He has a master's in forensic psychology. He's worked he's also a medium, and he's worked as a criminal profiler. Early in your career, Robert, you had a chance to interview Ted Bundy along with some others. When you interviewed him, did you know as much as we know about him now as to what he did? And tell me about that.
No, let me go to the backstory of how we even got to it. My angels, my spirit guides, whatever you want to call them, right? They urged me to write to Ted Bundy and to write to his lawyer and also to write to the warden. And Ted Bundy was on death row, which was 50 miles north of Gainesville, where I was going to school, right? And so I wrote to him, I wrote to those two other people, and 2 weeks later, I received a letter from all three of them stating that myself and four other psychologists could come and interview him. And There were no bars between us. There was no shield. We sat like we sat in a room, of course, and he was shackled completely. There were guards around him, security, right? We were 5 feet away from him. And let me tell you that when he walked into that room, the air changed. I could feel the air changing. I could feel the negativity. I could feel the hatred. Now, the other psychologists know what I did and such, right? And so, but they did not pick up on the air changing and anything like that at all. But what I experienced there was really, really, really true evil. It really was. There was nothing behind, when he spoke to me, there was nothing behind his eyes, just dead, complete dead. His affect, meaning his facial expression, was very flat to me at times. Other times he would look at there were also 3 psychologists there, 3 female psychologists. They were dressed in different types of clothing to entice him or to see what he would do, okay? And he reacted to them differently. He reacted differently to the other male psychologist that was there also, you know? And so what I'm going to tell you next, if you want to know, is about the way he was raised horribly. He was betrayed constantly by his own family, lied to. All in a nutshell, the person who he thought was his mother was, yes, it was his mother, but also his mother is his sister.
Wow.
Okay. And so he was lied to from the get-go. Okay. Right. He did all sorts of things. He acted out in school. He would openly masturbate. He would he would openly urinate and such like that. And he was born in a shelter in Vermont, moved to Pennsylvania. His grandparents adopted him, and then they moved. His mother, whose name is Eleanor Louise, she went by Louise, and they moved then from Philadelphia to the Pacific Northwest.
Was he born to be evil?
I think that we all have our own destiny, and he could have changed it in any circle, in any way, right? But what he got into the Ouija board. You're not going to find this anywhere, any information. Now, there was one documentary that I saw many, many years ago that he stated that he got into the dark side, and that was it. That was the only time I ever heard of that. And then it was just kind of played off, right? But I asked him about the Ouija board. And then he told me about how he got into the Ouija board. He did have a mentor, and that he really looked up to, of how he learned how to disembowel someone, dissect them. And that was Ed Gein. You know Ed Gein?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Inspiration for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And that's
and so those types of things you'll never hear. One thing that we could not do, that we could not videotape, we could not write anything down in the room at all whatsoever. You know, and so, but anyhow, we were with him about 90 minutes. I focused on the dark side of him. I focused on the evil side of him, you know, and also that I was with him the day that he was executed too. I was one of the 42 that were allowed to be in the chamber adjacent to him being electrocuted.
How do you handle that, being a psychic medium going through the process of an execution?
Again, I know how to open and close my abilities. Okay. So that day I knew there were going to be thousands of people outside. And of course there were, and just that whole vibe, all that negativity, everything, I never turned it on at all. And
did he ever contact you after the execution?
Twice. And let me tell you that every time that I talk about Ted Bundy, something happens to the film. Something happens during the podcast. The energy is it is just so negative that sometimes when I talk about the female victims, and again, I must say that I'm not here to glorify what that SOB did. I'm telling the story also of the victims.
Right.
Oh, of course.
But let me tell you that more times than not, when I talk about Ted Bundy, that things will go haywire. My voice will go out. Some people have even heard screams of the females being mutilated and being decapitated by Ted Bundy. And all these women looked like his mother. All of them, all the women looked like his mother. Also, I don't know if you knew this or not, but Ted Bundy is the one who turned in the Green River serial killer.
Yeah, I remember hearing something about them working with him, and they were trying to get into his head through Ted, but
right.
And a lot of folks kind of thought about that he was just trying to put off his execution too. Is that true?
Well, why he did what he did, because the Green River serial killer was in the Pacific Northwest the same time that Ted was, right? Ted told me that he needed to turn him in because it was taking the prime stock away from him. Okay? And so they were taking, in Ted's mind, that these women were just stock. They were just animals to be slaughtered. And that's why he turned in.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, keep telling us the rest of the story. It's interesting.
Okay. That I asked him about the Ouija board, and he said yes. He was drunk and they were high, you know how kids do and whatever, right? And so he got into the Ouija board. They were drunk and they were high. And again, this happened when he was in high school. And he summoned these demons. I'm not going to say the demon's name because to me, that's like a calling card. So I stay away from that, right? But anyhow, he was talking about that. Also talking about dissecting and decapitating people. And he was fascinated with that. That's why he was fascinated with Ed Gein, very much so. He began to kill little animals, put them on a Ouija board. He started to learn how to dissect them and to peel their skin back the way he wanted the skin to be pulled back and such like that. At times, he did consume the body parts of the females that he cut up, dissected, and he got off on that too. He got off more in the process of murdering these poor women than he did. Now, he said that he never penetrated a woman while they were alive. He penetrated a woman after they were dead.
Of course, if you're just joining us now, we're listening to disturbing details of an interview that Robert Righi conducted with convicted serial killer Ted Bundy back in 1980. Robert is a former criminal profiler. He has a master's in forensic psychology, and he's also a medium. And Ike, I know we want to get on a little bit on some of the things that Robert's doing today. You want to talk a bit about his work that he's up to today?
Actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to take something a little different there. Robert, given you have a background in psychology and social work, which is also somewhat psychologically oriented, I'm curious, how do you differentiate between, you've mentioned things like spiritual guides and sensing things in a room and so forth. How do you internally differentiate between sort of an external experience and an internal psychological experience that maybe you're having?
Right. That's one thing that I was fascinated with the field of psychology. And being a psychic medium, being Roman Catholic, my spirituality is upon that. I believe in angels, right? And everything. And sometimes sometimes like psychology is on one end of the pole and the spirituality is on the other side, right? So what I had to do was combine them. And because logically in my mind, being a psychologist, no, Robert, there's no such things, angels and those types of things, right? So I had to combine them, if that makes sense.
Robert, I wanted
to do it.
Go ahead.
It took me a while because my spirituality came first, years before I became a psychologist. Okay. And because in psychology, we learned, well, if somebody is manifesting these things, they have to be schizophrenic. They need, there's all sorts of psychological disorders that someone may be experiencing these things. But let me tell you, I have been tested many, many times when I was in school, when I was in grade school. I was tested psychologically because I went to a Catholic school, right? And I saw these spirits inside the room and also outside. I said one thing to a nun, and then she just went berserk. So they called a child psychologist. I was tested. I'm psychologically fit. You know what I mean? So they don't know what was going on with me. And so my parents again told me not to say anything. So I began to stuff my gifts and my abilities.
Robert, let me ask you now, you're currently, you work with children who are dying, children who are in hospice care. Switching gears a bit, maybe you can talk about, obviously it's very, it's very anguishing and sad work that you're doing. But from what I understand, you're also there to offer solace and consolation to the people who are left behind, the parents. Maybe you can talk about having to do both things.
Okay. A hospice reached out to me many years ago because my father was in hospice. And this hospice went from working with adults, ministering to adults, to children, because there was a great need for that. And a lot of hospices don't do that. So they reached out to me. They know who I am. They know my abilities and such like that. And so they asked me if I would be a volunteer. And I said, of course, because I believe that God puts us where we need to be at any given time. I believe everything happens for a reason. I do not believe in luck, nor do I believe in coincidences at all. And so I told them, sure, I would be more than happy. It's a blessing. And so at this very moment, I have been with about 16 children in their last hours of their lives. And now these parents know who I am and what I do. Okay, so they know what I do, and so they will agree. I'm called in, and a couple of times, like this little boy named Lucas, he was 6 years old, and when I walk into his room, he said, "I've been waiting for you." And I said, "What do you mean?" And his mom said, "I never told you anyone was coming." But these little guys and these little kids, they're like sponges anyhow. Yeah. And so they're in tuned to a lot of things, And so Lucas asked me if, and I bring my guitar. It's not that I play well, and I don't even sing well, but I bring my, so I play little songs with them, or I bring stuffed animals, bring blankets that people have made for me to give to the children. And so Lucas said, "Robert, let's talk about angels." And here he was 6 years old. You know what I mean? Here this child wants to speak about angels. I knew that he had leukemia and he had a brain tumor, and he didn't have any hair or eyebrows. So I cut my hair off. I shaved my head and my eyebrows, my mustache and everything. And to show him that I am in solidarity with him, that I love him. And hair is just hair, right? And but anyhow, and so he would rub my head. He goes, "Ooh, that feels good." He said, I remember Lucas said, "This is just like my head." And then he gave me a kiss, And when I'm working with these, being a minister, ministering to these children, their parents are always within eyesight and earshot of what's going on. I'm very transparent to protect myself and the child and everyone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I told Lucas, I said, Lucas, I said that I can only walk part of the journey with you, but this beautiful angel is going to be coming. And this angel is going to take you the rest of the way. And Lucas goes, who's going to be there in heaven? I said, all the children that you have known when you were in the hospital, they're going to be there. Maybe some of your relatives. But I said, you're going to a place where there's no more nurses or doctors, no more needles. You can play and you can jump and you can play football. And he loved to play soccer, but he had to stop playing soccer. And I said, this is going to be the most incredible time of your life. And his breathing started to change the air inside the room. Now, Lucas's parents, they noticed something also. There was a bright flash of light come in his room. And his parents saw that. We all saw it. And his mom goes, what is that? I said, the angel is coming. The angel is coming for Lucas. This is the time for you to get in bed with your son. And so they did. They were kissing him but you know what? But and it's been so many years since Lucas has passed, but just reliving and talking about having a mother sob the way she was. And a lot of these parents are not able to have another child.
Right.
So this is their only biological child. And his breathing, like I said, it was changing, the room changed, and this beautiful angel came. Now, sometimes the parents see that and sometimes they don't. Lucas's parents didn't, but Lucas was describing this beautiful angel to me, you know, and the angel sometimes wings, and Lucas goes, this angel doesn't have wings. How is he going to fly me to heaven? I said, don't worry about that. He's going to pick you up and he's going to carry you to heaven. And it was quite it was quite a blessing to me. But again, they see parents sobbing, grieving. It is overwhelming. Somebody asked me, Robert, do you cry with them? I said, of course I cry with them. My God, you know, if I did cry with them, I'm not a human being, you know?
Robert, those are some incredible stories. You've taken us on a roller coaster ride. We heard the Ted Bundy, the pit of humanity there, and really a very uplifting story to end the segment. We appreciate you being on the show. We're going to end it there with a very uplifting segment. Where can people find you on the web?
Just go to, I don't have a web page. I have no idea how to do that at all, none whatsoever. But I am with Paranormal Education, Paranormal 101 Education. I'm with that group. Also, I'm going to give out my telephone number, okay? They can call me. Everyone has my telephone number, 309-213-0325. And you can go to my web, just my regular Facebook page, Robert Righi. You'll see water going over rocks, a waterfall, and that's who I am.
Thank you, Robert, for being here. Incredible stories, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. God bless.
Incredible stories. Ike, you know, and Pete, one thing that got me when he was talking about Ted Bundy, and you hear about when I've seen, you know, interviews on him, and you always hear evil tied in with evil. And we've had guests on this show that talk about people that are possessed. And what we had one guest on who's worked with exorcisms in the past, and he said people who become possessed usually invite that in by Ouija boards, opening themselves up to paranormal experiences or just to demons. And it sounds like that may have been the case with Bundy as well. Ike?
You know what, Pete, if you don't mind unmuting, let me throw this to you because I think you're a lot more educated on this to have an opinion.
Sure. From what my understanding is that when you're dealing with energies like that, you have to invite them in and give them permission.
Yeah.
It's not something that is just takes you over. And usually a person that does something like that, it's they're in the lowest part of their life, having addiction issues, things like that would force them into that situation of giving the permission. But yeah, that's how it usually is done.
Ike, what is your opinion on, you've heard stories of Ted Bundy in the past. Do those stories coincide with what the information you've heard in the past before?
I tend to look at things from a psychological standpoint, and the idea that he came from a really strange, unusual, unhealthy family background would seem to make sense. Because people they're so vulnerable about who your mother figure is, who the father figure is. If you have siblings, if that stuff gets confused or crosses over at a very early age, then it's sort of a recipe for, I won't say a serial killer, but a troubled life.
Absolutely. If you're looking for Robert on Facebook, you can find him as Robert Righi, Righi. He is on Facebook and you can follow him there. Okay, let's move on to our news. Here's a look at some of the weird, tantalizing, and just plain bizarre stories posted from our partners at the Full Spectrum Project on Facebook. Make sure you follow them. Ike, did you have something for us first?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I do have some really interesting, oh gosh. I just got an extreme weather alert.
Okay. All right. So we'll go into other stories here. This one's involving exorcism. Thanks, Ike. Here, imagine this. Okay. Back to reality here. Imagine this. You're living in an apartment and you decide to finally invest into the home of your dreams in the suburbs. You purchase a 3-bedroom, older 2-story in a picturesque town called Cottage City, Maryland. It's literally a dream come true until you move into what you find out is the home that inspired the events in the movie The Exorcist. Yes, that's exactly right. That appears to be what happened to Danielle Wett and Ben Rocky Harris in a story published on the Washingtonian.com. And as Ike mentioned, when it's in the press, it's got to be true. Witt works in commercial real estate. She thought she did her research on her new home, but something apparently slipped through the cracks. This is the home that inspired the movie. In other words, it's the real home where a demon allegedly possessed a teenage boy back in 1949. The teen was supposedly possessed and exorcised by priests following some strange happenings in the home. We're talking furniture being flipped over, cold rooms, not necessarily vomiting green pea soup. But anyways, those events were created by filmmakers. And the book was actually written by a young man at the time. He lived in the area in Georgetown. He was a student. His name was William Peter Blatty. Blatty wrote The Exorcist. Now, the couple themselves have not reported any strange occurrences happening inside the home. The only weird elements they seem to be noticing are onlookers who show up at their doorstep wanting to take a photo with them in their house. The couple seems to be taking the history in stride, adopting the demon's name, Pazuzu, as their Wi-Fi hotspot. So now you know that. They will, however, not allow friends to bring over Ouija boards. There you go.
Todd, that's the same issue that they had with the Amityville Horror House. That when I forget who the owners were after the Luxes, the Clemardis or something like that.
Yeah.
That was the biggest issue that they had, were people tramping around and trying to look for the demons.
Yeah, looking for demons. And I don't know if I'd go too far as to name my home Wi-Fi Pazuzu.
Yeah, that's got guardrail written all over it.
I think that's probably a pretty common theme in a lot of the investigations we hear at hauntings and possessions is also Wi-Fi problems.
Wi-Fi problems. There you go. Okay, second story. This one real quick. Here's this one's for public consumption. This comes to us from phantomsandmonsters.com, which is Lon Strickler's site. Here's the headline. You'll love this, Ike. Former airline executive says law enforcement needs to warn the public about O'Hare Mothman. That's right. Strickler says he recently received an email from an airline industry executive who says he's witnessed strange aerial phenomena and heard firsthand testimony from pilots. He says he received a report in this past August, by the way, from a Chicago resident who lives just south of O'Hare Airport. The resident told him they live near a duck pond where it's not uncommon to spot coyotes. Well, apparently one night around 2 a.m, the witness awakened by the noise of a canine in distress. He characterized it as a super loud screaming noise. He also theorized it was a coyote because who'd be out walking their dog at 2 a.m? Well, the witness says, what type of predator would be large enough to capture a 60-pound coyote? Mothman, of course. Why not? Because of this, the former airline exec is warning everyone to beware of Mothman at night, capturing and torturing your pets and possibly humans. And he's thinking law enforcement should send out an alert, like you've been hearing, Ike. And if you wander out at night in Chicago, be prepared to defend yourself. Okay, is it just me or is there just a few holes in this story? Ike?
I think it sounds like Hell's Ducks. They're going after canines.
Well, we had attacking marauding river otters last week. Tonight, we've got Mothman in Chicago.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, you got to watch out there, folks. World's going to hell in a handbasket. Ike?
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Do you want to, should we tell people where to find us on like the stuff with the Wi-Fi?
Yeah, the social stuff. Yeah. So I apologize ahead of time, but now Ike has taken over our social media. So he'll be handling us, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter as the Road Beyond Podcast. Also, make sure you subscribe to our Road Beyond Podcast YouTube channel. Okay, gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Next week, we're back with 2 new shows. Pete, thanks as always. Thanks, Pete. Okay, Ike?
Extreme weather event.
Okay, all right. And hopefully Ike will be back next week. Folks, thanks for joining us on the Road Beyond Podcast. We'll see you again next time.